the
I,
question?
I can read.
I'll read
Yes.
after you.
Okay, I will read Rangata.
Yeah, go ahead.
In the process of this change, there must be, by the very necessity of the effort, two stages of its working. First, there will be the personal endeavor of the human being as soon as he becomes aware by his soul, mind, heart of this divine possibility, and turns towards it as the true object of life, to prepare himself for it and to get rid of all in him that belongs to a lower working, of all that stands in the way of his opening to the spiritual truth and its power, so as to possess by this liberation his spiritual being and turn all his natural movements into free means of its self-expression. It is by this turn that the self-conscious yoga, aware of its aim, begins. There is a new awakening and an upward change of the life motive. So long as there is only an intellectual, ethical, and other self-training for the now normal purposes of life, which does not travel beyond the ordinary circle of working of mind, life, and body, we are still only in the obscure and yet unillumined preparatory yoga of nature. We are still in pursuit of only an ordinary human perfection, a spiritual desire of the divine and of the divine perfection, of a unity with Him in all our being, and a spiritual perfection in all our nature is the effective sign of this change, the precursory power of a great integral conversion of our being and living.
So we have to understand the way he uses language. Okay, so in the process of this change from human nature to divine nature, in this process of this change, there must be, by the very necessity of the effort, two stages of its working. And what are these two stages? Let us see very clearly. He is stating. First, there will be, by the personal endeavor of the human being. Okay, the divine is helping you, but you are not seeing the divine. You are only making your own effort. This first stage is uh, all human beings. In the beginning, when you start, you are not aware of the divine help, although it is there. Okay, and you are making effort by your own mind, vital, and your even body. Okay, depending on how you are stressing the which part of your being. It's your human endeavor. Okay, as soon as he becomes aware by his soul, mind, heart of this divine possibility and turns towards it as a true object of life, to prepare himself for it and to get rid of all in him that belongs to the lower working, of all that stands in the way of his opening to the spiritual truth and its power, so as to possess by this liberation his spiritual being and turn all his natural movements into free means of self expression. Huge sentence, and Sri Aurobindo goes into great detail because he doesn't leave any description unsaid. He tells you everything. So the first stage is obviously your own effort, which is what we are all doing. We are making an effort. We are not, the divine is helping you, but we are not fully conscious of the divine help. Sometimes we may get a hint that, oh, this, I did not try and yet it came. So you know, you can sometimes feel the divine help. So this is the first stage. And then once you become aware of your soul, the second stage should begin. Once you become aware of your own soul. But before that, it's a human effort. Personal endeavor is the word Sri is using of the human being. See, very clear. So many words, but it's very clear. The personal endeavor of the human being. You are still human. You are not being helped by the divine. As soon as he becomes aware of it by his soul, mind, heart, of this divine possibility, and turn towards it as a true object of life. Now you know that this is what you have to do. And you start your effort. And what are you doing? So therefore, to prepare yourself, okay? Prepare himself for it and to get rid of all in him that belongs to the lower working. So which are those things that you need to get rid of? 90% desire, attachments, and ego. Ego will not go away so easily, but you have to go on becoming conscious of it and go on saying, I don't want, I don't want. Desire also. Sometimes we make a confusion between desire and need. Okay. But you have to be very, very strict with yourself, and you will see that afterwards, need, if it is there, the divine will provide. But sometimes you confuse need and desire. Okay, so that these things have to be removed. They are the lower working. Lower working, the attachment, desire, and ego, mainly. Of all that stands in the way of his opening to the spiritual truth. So everything, negative emotions that you have, you have to say no to that. Pettiness, selfishness, jealousy, envy, anger are all these things that actually hinder, stands in the way, as Sri is saying, of his opening to spiritual truth and his power. So as to possess by this liberation his spiritual being and turn all his natural movements into free means of self-expression. Possessed by this liberation, his spiritual being. Which is his spiritual being? It could either be the psychic being or it could be the self. Okay? And turn all his natural movements. What are the natural movements? Thinking, emoting, okay, and even your body movements. These are the natural movements belonging to nature, okay, into free means of self-expression. It is by this turn that the self-conscious yoga, aware of its aim, begins. Okay? Now, this is the second stage. The yoga becomes self-conscious because now you are aware of your soul. There is a new awakening and an upward change of the life motive. Earlier things which interested you, you are not interested anymore. Okay? There is a new change and a change in the life motive. Now the motive is only the divine. Not anymore food, clothes, attachments, friends, society, all these things disappear. So long as there is only an intellectual, ethical, or self-training for the now normal purposes of life, which does not travel beyond the ordinary circle of working of mind, life, and body, we are still only in the obscure and yet unillumined preparatory yoga of nature. Preparatory name. When you are making your effort by your own self, you are in the unillumined preparatory yoga of nature. Note the word yoga of nature. Okay. Afterwards, it becomes self-conscious yoga of the soul. Okay. We are still in pursuit of only an ordinary human perfection. A spiritual desire of the divine and of the divine perfection, of a unity with Him in all our being, and a spiritual perfection in all our nature is the effective sign of this change. You want to Chandra is speaking a very high level, the precursory power of a great integral conversion of our being and life. Now we can go to the next para by personal effort. So the personal effort is the first stage. Maybe he'll talk now about the second stage. Let's see. So Sunki read now.
I'll read, Rangada.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
By personal effort, a precursory change, a preliminary conversion can be effected. It amounts to a greater or less spiritualizing of our mental motives, our character and temperament, and a mastery, stilling or changed action of the vital and physical life. This converted subjectivity can be made the base of some communion or unity of the soul and mind with the divine and some partial reflection of the divine nature in the mentality of the human being. That is as far as man can go by his unaided or indirectly aided effort, because that is an effort of mind and mind cannot climb beyond itself permanently. At most, it arises to a spiritualized and idealized mentality. If it if it shoots up beyond that border, it loses hold of itself, loses hold of life, and arrives either at a trance of absorption or a passivity. A greater perfection can only be arrived at by a higher power entering in and taking up the whole action of the being. The second stage of this yoga will therefore be a persistent giving up of all action of the nature into the hands of this great power, a substitution of its influence, position, and working for the personal effort until the divine to whom we aspire becomes the direct master of the yoga and effects the entire spiritual and ideal conversion of the being.
So he has told you very clearly what is the second stage. The first stage is when you are making an effort. Okay, you are not conscious of your soul. You are making an effort with your own vital and mind, and you are making an effort. That's the first stage. Second stage is when you can surrender to the Lord because you have. See, I'm reading the last bit. Okay, the second stage of this yoga will therefore be a persistent giving up of all the action of the nature into the hands of the greater power. That means you are surrendering yourself to the divine, and all your earlier, your mental thoughts, your vital emotions, and your even your physical movements, all these things, now you are being able to give them to the Lord. Before sleeping, you think of the divine and ask for help. Before eating, you offer your food to the divine. Before starting out of your house, you remember and ask even mother to be your sit as a pillion rider on your scooter. Okay? So these becomes absolutely a living thing. Okay? That's the second stage. That's what Srindra is talking about. So we go back to the beginning of the paragraph. By personal effort, a precursory change, a preliminary, he is using another word also, precursory, before the change happens, the first change, a preliminary conversion can be effective. Personal effort, definitely something can be done. It orients you correctly. There is no transformation by personal effort, but a orientation towards the whole of life can be changed. It amounts to a greater or less spiritualizing of our mental motives, our character and temperament, and a mastery, skilling, or changed action of the vital and physical life. So note again the gradation. Okay, a character and temperament, and a mastery. Okay, you are trying to become master of your own body mind life, or you still their actions. Stilling normally refers to the mind and the vital. Body you can't still because it has to do all sorts of action. But your mind can become still, silent mind, or your vital can also become still, which is known as samatha. You become absolutely untouched by anything that comes into you. Or changed action. Some change is there. So you can see very clearly there a gradation of what Sandhi is saying. Either it can be a mastery, which comes much later on, it doesn't come in the beginning. Stilling, you're trying to make your mind silent and your vital absolutely equal to everything. Change action, some amount of change can come of the vital and physical life. This converted subjectivity can be converted. What does it mean by converted? Earlier, the subjectivity was all for your own egoistic activities. But now the subjectivity is all turned towards the divine and not your ego. So that is a converted subjectivity. Can be made the base of some communion or unity of the soul in mind, mostly it's with the mind, with the divine, and some partial reflection of the divine nature in the mentality of the human being. So already when you have a spiritual experience, the change begins. Okay, before that, it is purely a human personal effort. That is as far as man can go by his unaided or indirectly aided effort. Sometimes you may feel that you're not being aided, or aid is there, but you're not conscious of it, indirectly aided effort. Because that's an effort of mind. And mind cannot climb beyond itself permanently. The consciousness can go up, but the mind can't. Mind is limited to your brain activity only. At most, it arises to a spiritualized and idealized mentality. Note the words spiritualized and idealized. Okay? This is the level 2, the spiritual planes of consciousness. But Srimad is always stressing that the spiritualizing and he uses the words ideal for the spiritual planes of consciousness. Idealized mentality, not the supermentalized mentality. If it shoots up beyond that border, it loses hold of itself, loses hold of life, and arrives either at a trance of absorption or a passivity. If you remember in the synthesis much earlier, he has said that if you go the normal way, there is a choice. Either you choose the divine and you lose hold of life, your hold on life becomes loose, or if you want to use a normal life, you want to lead a normal life, then you lose the divine. So that's what he's saying here. In other words, okay? When you go beyond the mind, what happens? It loses hold of itself, loses hold of life. You are not in touch with life anymore. Okay? Arrives either at a trance of absorption or a passivity. Trance means your physical awareness of the physical world disappears. That's a trance. Okay? Or it can be a passivity. You are fully conscious of everything in the physical world, but you are hardly interested. Very passive. A greater perfection can only be arrived at by a higher power entering in and taking up the whole action of the being. So this greater perfection is talking of level 3 very clearly. Okay? Because you said spiritualized and idealized mentality, level 2, the spiritual planes. Great as it is, a spiritual realization is wonderful, but it does not change your character in the level 1. It does not change. So you have to, for that, you have to go to a third level, which Srimad is referring here as a greater perfection, can only be arrived at by higher power. The higher power is the supermental power entering in and taking up the whole action of the being. Srimad is not saying very clearly supermind, because even the spiritual planes of consciousness, as you keep rising, some changes do occur. Okay? A greater perfection comes in, but not the greatest perfection. The body-mind life does not change unless you go to the Superman. A greater perfection can only be arrived at by higher power entering in and taking up the whole action of the being. Whole action, mind, life, body. The second stage of this yoga will therefore be a persistent giving up of all the action of the nature into the hands of this greater power. So, very clearly, this means surrender. You surrender entirely to the divine and ask them to take your life over. You hand over your power of attorney. Okay, as Ramakrishna used the word, power of attorney, you hand over to the divine and say, you do what you think best in my interest. A substitution of its influence, possession, and working for the personal effort until the divine to whom we aspire becomes the direct master of the yoga and affects the entire spiritual and ideal conversion of the being. So this can't be done unless you go to the third level and you, the master of works, okay, the Ishvara, he takes care of you and starts doing everything for you. The double character of the yoga. Double character, personal effort, and then the divine help. The personal effort is the first level, and the divine helps you, and you become fully conscious of that, and you surrender to the divine. That's the second stage. Okay. This double character. Now we can go to the next one. Kiran, if you have the text, you can read.
Yes, Rangadhar.
Go ahead. This double character.
This double character of our yoga raises it beyond the mundane ideal of perfection, while at the same time it goes too beyond the loftier, intenser, but much narrower religious formula. The mundane ideal regards man always as a mental, vital, and physical being, and its aim at a human perfection well within these limits. A perfection of mind, life, and body, and expansion and refinement of the intellect and knowledge, of the will and power, of ethical character, aim and conduct, of aesthetic sensibility and creativeness, of emotional balanced poise and enjoyment, of vital and physical soundness, regulated action and just efficiency. It is a wide and full aim, but yet not sufficiently full and wide because it ignores that other greater element of our being, which the mind vaguely conceives as a spiritual element and leaves it either undeveloped or insufficiently satisfied as merely some high occasional or added derivatory experience. The result of the action of mind in its exceptional aspects or dependent upon mind for its presence and persistence. It can become a high aim when it seeks to develop the loftier and the larger reaches of our mentality, but yet not sufficiently high because it does not aspire beyond mind to that uh, of which our purest reason, our brightest mental intuition, our deepest mental sense and feeling, strongest mental will and power, or ideal aim and purpose are only pale radiations. Its aim, besides, is limited to a terrestrial perfection of the normal human life.
Remember, he spoke about perfection and he said that there is a mundane perfection, then there is a moral perfection, there is a religious perfection, and there is a spiritual perfection. So now he is speaking about the mundane perfection he is talking about. This double character of our yoga. Now, note very carefully what he means by this. We are not rejecting the physical world, right? That's why it is double character. Whereas the other yogas, they give up the physical world, and theirs is not a double character. It's a single character. They concentrate only on the divine and give up the lower. But in Srimad Yoga, you don't give up the physical. Okay? The physical world is not given up. That's why it's double character. There's a spiritual perfection, but there should also be a spiritual perfection is there, and there should also be a physical perfection. That's why the double character of the yoga. Of our yoga, note that. Because the other yogas, it's not a double character. Raises it beyond the mundane ideal of perfection. He has discussed mundane ideal of perfection, remember? A better education, a better health for everybody, better world conditions, a house, enough clothing, a sufficient education. All this is the mundane ideal of perfection. So you have to go beyond. Why is he bringing this? Because we are not giving up the physical world. In other words, mundane perfection is also part of the spiritual life. Okay? That's why he is bringing in this. Okay? Double character of yoga. You can see very clearly, double character is linked with the mundane ideal of perfection. While at the same time, it goes to beyond the loftier, intenser, and much narrower religious formula. Remember, he has spoken about the mundane perfection and the religious perfection. Religious perfection, Fridays you go to the temple or the mosque, okay? On Sundays you go to the church and try to be a better human being. This is religious perfection. But now we are going beyond that. The mundane ideal regards man always as a mental, vital, and physical being. Note very clearly that the spiritual ideal does not regard man as only mental, vital, and physical being, but a soul. But the mundane ideal sees man only as a mental, vital, and physical being, and it aims at a human perfection, well within these limits, the limits of body, mind, life. A perfection of mind, life, and body, a expansion and refinement of the intellect and knowledge, of the will and power, of ethical character, aim and conduct, of aesthetic sensibility and creativeness, of emotional balance, power, and enjoyment, of vital and physical soundness, regulated action, and just efficiency. He is giving in great detail what he means by mundane perfection. We'll have a look at that. He is not leaving anything to your imagination. telling you very clearly what the mundane ideal is. Regards man always as a mental, vital, and physical being, very clear, not soul. The spiritual ideal views man as basically a soul endowed with a body, mind, life. The mundane ideal regards man always as a mental, vital, physical being, and it aims at a human perfection. And now he explained to you what he means by human perfection. Well within these limits, the limits of mind, life, and body. And what is perfection of mind, life, and body? What is that? He explained. An expansion and refinement of the intellect and knowledge. You should have as much knowledge as possible, and your intellect must be developed fully so that you can understand subtle things also. And it will also expand. It should not be narrow. Expansion and refinement of the intellect and knowledge, of the will and power, of the vital, the will and power, of ethical character, the ethical character, the moral character, not telling lies, not hurting others. These are all the ethical character. Being kind to everybody, aim and conduct. This is the ethical character. Of aesthetic sensibility and creativeness, your higher vital should also become sensitive to beauty and creativeness also. Of emotional balance, poise, and enjoyment. You should enjoy, certainly, but that enjoyment should not be attachment to the wrong types of pleasures. Okay? It should be emotional balance, poise, and enjoyment. Enjoyment of everything in the right way, without attachment, desire, and ego. Then also physical soundness. You must have a good health and you must have no disease as far as possible. Regulated action. Regulated action is very important, and that's greatly stressed in the ashram. Regulated action. Do everything according to a very, very fixed program and discipline. Don't be haphazard and without discipline. Regulated action and just efficiency. It is a wide and full aim. Which one? The mundane perfection. It's a wide and full aim, but yet not sufficiently full and wide, because it ignores that other greater element of our being, which the mind vaguely conceives as a spiritual element and leaves it either undeveloped or insufficiently satisfied as merely some high occasional or added derivatory experience. The mundane ideal, even if there is a soul, they are not fully conscious of it. They concentrate mainly on the perfection of mind, life, and body. Either undeveloped or sufficiently satisfied, insufficiently satisfied as merely some high occasional or added derivatory experience. The result of the action of mind in its exceptional aspect or dependent upon mind for its presence and persistence. It can become a high aim when it seeks to develop the loftier and the larger reaches of our mentality. Which is the loftier and larger reaches of mentality? Spiritual planes of consciousness. But yet not sufficiently high, not yet the third level, because it does not aspire beyond mind to that of which our purest reason, our brightest mental intuition, our deepest mental sense and feeling, strongest mental will and power or ideal, aim and purpose are the only paid radiations. So you have to go far beyond your reason and your mental intuition and your mental sense and will. You have to go beyond the mind. The perfection of the mind are only pale radiations of that higher perfection. Its aim, besides, is limited to a terrestrial perfection of the normal human life. He has described in great detail what is the mundane perfection. So now, the next para, the yoga of integral perfection, you have to go to a divine perfection and not be satisfied only by a mundane perfection or a religious perfection. So we can read the next one. Shilpa, if you have the text, you can read.
Yes, Rangadhar.
Go ahead. A yoga of integral perfection.
Yes. I'm reading.
Dada,
Yes.
Dada,
Yes.
can we take Arjuna and Sri Ramchandra as the examples of this mundane perfection, mundane ideal perfection? Can we
Oh,
take them
no,
as
no,
examples?
no, no, not at all. Sri Krishna is telling him to go to spiritual level. That's it. Spiritual level he is asking him to go to. He's not a mundane perfection at all. Mundane perfection is an ordinary man who is trying to improve your educational system and your health system and your courts. Okay, that is mundane perfection. And a good education, that's all. Nothing to do with spirituality. Whereas Arjuna is being told by Sri Krishna to rise to the second level, the spiritual, where you are absolutely equal to everything. You can't. That's the advice being given to Arjuna by Sri Krishna is spiritual, not mundane perfection at all. Mundane perfection is what all governments in the world are trying to do. Roti, kapda, makan. Improve conditions for roti, kapda, makan. Your food, your habitation, and your normal living. Okay?
Oh.
Mundane perfection of the physical world, not spiritual at all. Nothing spiritual.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Shilpa, go ahead.
Yes. A yoga of integral perfection regards man as a divine spiritual being involved in mind, life, and body. It aims, therefore, at a liberation and a perfection of his divine nature. It seeks to make an inner living in the perfectly developed spiritual being his constant, intrinsic living and the spiritualized action of mind, life, and body, only its outward human expression. In order that this spiritual being may not be something vague and indefinable or else, but imperfectly realized and dependent on the mental support and the mental limitations. It seeks to go beyond mind to the supramental knowledge, will, sense, feeling, intuition, dynamic initiation of vital and physical action, all that makes the native working of the spiritual being. It accepts human life but take account of the large supraterrestrial action behind the earthly material living, and it joins itself to the divine being from whom the supreme origination of all these partial and lower states proceeds, so that the whole of the life may become aware of its divine source and feel in each action of knowledge, of will, of feeling, sense, and body the divine originating impulse. It rejects nothing that is essential in the mundane aim, but enlarges it, finds and lives in its greater and its truer meaning, now hidden from it, transfigures it from a limited earthly and moral things to a figure of infinite, divine, and more immortal values.
Yeah. So, very clearly, he's telling you what the spiritual perfection is. Yoga of integral perfection, what it is. Okay. And the first statement he makes is that the mundane life regards man as only body mind life, whereas the yoga of integral perfection regards man mainly as a divine spiritual being who is involved in mind, life, and body. That means you are the psychic being. The psychic being is a divine element in you, and you have the good fortune of getting a mind, life, and body for your development. So that's all. It makes a totally different change. It aims, therefore, at a liberation and a perfection of the divine nature. If that's the essential part of it, that's what you have to make perfection. It seeks to make an inner living in the perfectly developed spiritual being, his constant intrinsic living and the spiritualized action of mind, life, and body, only its outward human expression. The action of the body, mind, life is only outward human expression. In order that the spiritual being may not be something vague and indefinable, else but imperfectly realized and dependent on the mental support and the mental limitations, it seeks to go beyond mind to the supramental knowledge. Beyond mind means, Sriyanga means very clearly the spiritual planes, okay? Because you can't go from normal mind to supramental knowledge straight away. You have to go from the spiritual plane only. So beyond mind to the supramental knowledge, will, sense, feeling, intuition, dynamic initiation of vital and physical action. All that makes the native working of the spiritual being. It accepts human life, but takes account of the large supra-terrestrial action behind the earthly living, material living, sorry. It accepts human life, but takes account of the large supra-terrestrial action behind the earthly material living. And it joins itself to the divine being from whom the supreme origination of all our partial and lower states proceeds, so that the whole of life may become aware of its divine source. In other words, we do see the body-mind life, but we know that everything is coming from a much higher level. We become conscious of that level. It rejects nothing that is essential in the mundane aim. Now that's interesting. The world in integral perfection is not rejected in the physical world, but you don't accept everything in it. Okay? You don't accept mundane perfection includes so many other things also. Okay? Only those things which are essential you take up. There are so many things in the physical world which are, say, let us say, entertainment. Okay, entertainment of various types. Okay, vulgar cinema, vulgar music. Okay, all these things you won't accept, but certainly you will accept music at its purest. Okay, like classical music, Western or Indian, that you will accept, but not the vulgar motions. Okay, so note the word essential. Okay, nothing that is essential in the mundane aim, because essential, as I said, rock and roll and all these things are not essential at all, but music is essential, so you will take that. Dance is essential, but not this modern type of very vulgar dancing, that it won't accept, but enlarges it. Doesn't keep it confined, small. Enlarges it, finds and lives in its greater and its truer meaning, now hidden from it. Transfigures it from a limited earthly and mortal being to a figure of infinite, divine, and immortal values. This is what the spiritual aims at. Not only spiritual perfection, but the integral perfection. You don't raise the world, you take everything that is essential in it and raise it to a higher level of consciousness. So we stop here today. We have already gone 2 minutes beyond our time. Next time, we'll take up the integral yoga meets the religious idea. He is taking one by one all the mundane perfection. Now he's talking about religious perfection. Next, he will talk about the spiritual perfection also. Are we rejecting mundane perfection and religious perfection? No, we are not rejecting, but taking only that which is essential in them. Okay, so I'm stopping here. The integral yoga meets next time. We'll take up next Friday the integral yoga. Okay.
Thank you, Rangadhar.
Okay.
Thank you,
Au revoir,
Mr.
everybody.
Nanda. Thank you.
Thank you, Rangadhar. Au revoir.